Denny Hamlin is not happy at what NASCAR has turned the Daytona 500 into, describing it as a effing crapshoot now, and noting that it pretty much has everything to do with luck. It is no longer about driver skill. It is no longer about bringing the best car to the show and putting on a fantastic race. That's not what it is about anymore. It is about surviving the wreck and being the first to take the checkered flag. So I wrote this up over at stockcarreport.com. You can find the link in the description below. And Hamlin made these comments on the most recent episode of Actions Detrimental with Denny Hamlin. You can watch the entire podcast episode here on stockcarreport.com if you'd like, or here on YouTube as well. But this is what he had to say. He talked about how he was not happy. He was very angry and he was pissed when he woke up this morning. And he talked about how he learned all of the great super speedway racing from the greats such as Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt, but noted that times have changed now. He then questioned, are we now going to start viewing the Daytona 500 winners like we question our champions? It's a bunch of questions now. And I hate that for the winners because this is their big moment to shine and it's a big accomplishment. But I hate the fact about how much luck is involved in NASCAR now. I used to hate the word luck, and it was so overused in our sport for decades. NASCAR media overuses the word luck so much. They always have. And it's like, no, you've got to put yourself in the position to not capitalize on others' misfortune. That's luck. Like you needed them to have misfortune for you to win. That is luck. But it's making the moves at the end of the race to win. And it's that, wow, that guy just did something that's hard to do. It shows that he's better than the rest of them. And I feel like we've lost that. I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. I don't think we'll ever see another super speedway with Dale Earnhardt passing, 10, 15 people in the last 7, 8 laps and winning. We will never see that ever again because he was really, really good. At least not with the way that that NASCAR is running the show now. We won't see that anymore because it's not possible. It's not possible. And Hamlin points this out. He's absolutely right with that. He says it's just a matter of wrecks at super speedways. And I feel like the Daytona 500 is a microcosm of the sport in general when it comes to how we crown our champion now as well. He then explained, this started with the competition group a decade ago when we started cutting horsepower because we wanted to look good on TV. We want you to think that they can pass, not that they can actually pass. And it just, for me, has gotten to the place where the entertainment of it has far overtaken the sport of it, and I don't know how we reverse things. Yeah, I absolutely can't stand it. I mean, I guess there is the optics that people like, that they're going side by side, 3x3, and it looks like really cool and all, and they talk about how many lead changes there are and all of this stuff, but to me, I'm just like, well, they're all saving gas. They're not actually trying. We're not seeing anyone try to do breakaways. It's not like you used to see, you see like the breakaways where there would be the guys that would be able to run away from the pack. The pack would have to get sorted themselves together in order to be able to try and track them down. You never saw any of that. You don't see any of that stuff anymore. It's completely gone. It's missing. The only place you see that now is basically if you're watching the Tour de France or like cycling now, where the peloton can kind of try and reel in the group that decides to break away. So if you want to get that, you have to watch cycling now instead of NASCAR, and it's an absolute shame. It's an absolute shame that we don't see racing like that anymore at all, because all of these cars are basically the same. They all just sit there side by side and just run around the track for I guess it was 165 or 185 laps before they all decided that they needed to start making moves. And then we got the big wreck, and then we just got we ran a bunch of laps under caution, and then they go back green again, and then they're wrecking right away, and then we're going into overtime, and then you're wrecking in overtime. I mean, it's just wreck, and there isn't any real racing or talent or skill or strategy actually involved. It sucks. So I totally agree with Denny Hamlin. He goes on and says, we used to run 200 miles an hour at super speedways, and the cars were hard to really drive and handle. Daytona 500 was a battle of the best driver and the best team that brought the best car that had a great setup under it. And some of the greats of our sports could navigate the traffic and use it to their advantage. That art is gone now. Just like the art of passing on short tracks is gone now. Now we just knock each other out of the way and say, that's just short track racing. He then briefly talked about how much he spends on his 2311 team and their cars to try and give them a chance at winning. And he said this, it's just such a effing crapshoot now. I hate that what is supposed to be our most prestigious race, a showcase of heroes, is luck. It is luck. And I don't care how else you want to say it. It is luck. And it is luck because you just have to avoid the wrecks. And then if you can get lucky enough to where you avoid the wreck and then the track stays green and you get to race back. I just don't know anymore. I don't know anymore. And I've grown really agitated with how we've gotten here. He then returned to why the racing has regressed, saying it's a product of the cars are way too easy to drive. They have way too much grip, way too much drag. And what it does is it creates a great optic on TV that these cars 2x2, 3x3, but ain't nobody passing nobody. We're out there just riding, saving fuel for the greater part of the race. We definitely should address it. I 100% agree. This needs to be addressed. I guess there's a lot of people out there that just like seeing the cars run side by side. There isn't even really like jockeying for position. So like I'll go and watch a late model stock race. The Hampton Heat is kind of known for it, where they will be riding around, or Florence or whatever. They'll ride around trying to save their tires. It's not a fuel saving race, but they're trying to save their tires. But you still will see some guys get out there, jockey for position. They might be running like 60% throttle or whatever, but there will be the 3, 4, 5 guys that will try to jockey for position. And then even when you're still running at that 60% throttle, those guys are still trying to set themselves up for that late race run there. They want to be in kind of the top 5, top 10 so they can make that run and hopefully capitalize on being able to save those tires. But we don't really even see that now because it doesn't really matter. You can still just run at the rear of the field. We saw Joey Logano do it. I mean, he ran at the rear of the field almost all through stage 2, and then stage 3 begins. He doesn't even really make a move until 20 laps to go, and then he basically brings that top lane to the front himself, but then obviously gets caught up trying to be a little bit too aggressive. Obviously, maybe loses his temper a little bit too much with Stenhouse there, causes that first big wreck. But I think Logano is the perfect example of the fact that you don't have to be up at the front, even with 20 laps to go, to kind of make a move to win the race, right? They are just kind of riding around. You don't have to even be doing any kind of jockeying for position. Sure, there's some lead changes and all of this stuff, but it's lead changes between the 2 or 3 guys that are at the front of the field anyways. And then it's when, okay, I need to save a little bit more gas, so I'm going to go sit back in the third car out of this row or whatever. So you let another guy pull forward. It's all an illusion. As for how to solve the problem with the cars, Hamlin said, if I could throw out my suggestion, it's to NASCAR to please get drag out of these cars. Reduce spoiler size, please. I just think we got to get drag out of these race cars. It will fix so many things. I believe it will fix a bit of the fuel mileage races that we have. It will allow us to pull out of line when we get runs. It will allow us to not be so stuck to the racetrack. Getting a large chunk of drag out of these cars, reducing the horsepower back to what we had before. I just want to see us do something different to put the sport back in it and take luck back out of these prestigious events. Interestingly, so that's basically what Hamlin had to say right there for the most part. He goes on throughout the interview addressing his thoughts on kind of Kyle Busch, what happened with him, his comments about NASCAR officials, talks about the Logano and Stenhouse wreck, etc. Talks about Cole Custer a lot as well, discusses much of the race. But those were kind of his comments about the Daytona 500, talking about how it has kind of become much more of a luck-based race. The skill has been taken out of it. He also does talk about that the issue is a combination of things. It obviously is the car, the fact that they are fully in control now, that you don't feel like they're out of control, and then obviously the drivers and some of the decisions that they're making and that they're not being held accountable by the media was one of his talking points as well, which I'm not really sure if that is one of the major factors. I mean, he points out kind of like how Cole Custer was kind of mucking it up after he was involved in 2 of the wrecks, or has been accused of basically causing 2 of those wrecks. Although I think the second one is a combination of side draft plus making contact with Chase Briscoe. And then the first one, I think that's just something we've seen, is that the Fords are always like the good pushers. The other manufacturers just usually can't handle the push. So I don't know, 5 to go. He's pushing Christopher Bell. So I mean, as much as Hamlin says that the media is like, oh, it's just super speedway racing. That's exactly what Christopher Bell said, because it is. That's what happens now. That's what they do. So I guess I mean, you obviously can blame the drivers a little bit for that, but I think it has a lot more to do with the circumstances they find themselves in and how they can react to those circumstances rather than the drivers themselves. That's just my opinion. But he included that as well. So what I found interesting is a lot of this is what Mark Martin was saying during the rain delay. He did an Ask Me Anything over on X. This guy, Kenneth Strong, says, why does NASCAR and the rules package suck so much these days? Why do we continue to dumb the cars down to where anyone can drive them? Why does every car have to be identical? What happened to race what you brought? Let the boys go. And Mark says it's an attempt to get more people watching on TV, putting on a show to connect with new fans. I haven't been a supporter of some of it. I believe the racing needs to have some resemblance to what it always was. There is no simple solution. Another person said this, in layman's terms, I've always felt the car needs to be faster than the track can handle to have good racing. We don't have that at Daytona and Talladega anymore and haven't for years. The cars should be super hard to drive. And Mark says, I've been saying this since the mid-90s, but the advocacy for what we have today is it's a hell of a show wreck. And that's pretty much what it is now. Instead of seeing highlights of Dale Earnhardt making great passes, highlights of Dale Earnhardt Jr., which is what they do show to promote this stuff, what we see in most of the modern races now, it's the wreck. It's just the big wrecks, whatever the big wrecks are. It's Ryan Preece flying through the air. I think he's in two of them now. That's the highlight. That's what you're coming to watch now. I was commenting this to my parents. The draw for these super speedway races isn't the skill, the talent of the drivers. It's not the race. It's when is the big wreck going to happen. That's what you're watching for. You're watching to see when the wreck will happen. You're not really watching to see the sport. And I think that's one of Denny Hamlin's biggest complaints. Another guy says, that's the problem these days. The people running NASCAR want it to be entertainment first, then a sport, instead of a sport that puts the most badass product on track first, which in turn creates natural entertainment. Too many gimmicks these days to manufacture drama. And Mark said, I don't disagree at all with your statement. If I was still racing, I'd be happy to take a pay cut to get back to that. However, you would lose more fans initially because it wouldn't be as flashy and might take a long time to recover. I don't think the industry is for that. And then we had this last person here saying, it takes legitimacy out of the winner, though, and watered down. The racing was better when the cars were strung out a bit and the top drivers could make moves, not be stuck in a conga line. And Mark says, I agree with you, but I also believe the internet would break from people complaining it was boring. So Mark obviously agrees, I think, with a lot of what Denny Hamlin had to say here. He was saying this before Denny Hamlin even said it. He said it on Sunday during the rain delay break. Denny Hamlin kind of says it here on Actions Detrimental. I think those are two of the two guys with their heads on right when it comes to the racing. And maybe there's something to this idea that it would be boring. I don't know. That's the racing I grew up on. That's the racing I love. That was the racing that brought NASCAR to kind of like the peak of its dominance in the 90s and 2000s when NASCAR was at the top. I think it was close to being like overtaking the NFL at one point. That's how popular it had been. And for whatever reason, it's gone downhill ever since and hasn't really recovered since then. And I don't think it's on the way to recovering or getting back up to that pinnacle that it was anytime soon. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they do choose entertainment over the sport. And I think that's going to hurt in the long run. Short-term decisions that might be beneficial in the short run, but in the long run, they are massively detrimental. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here with NASCAR. Now we'll see maybe if they can listen to Denny Hamlin, listen to Mark Martin, listen to some of these guys that are offering this advice and get back to it. But there is a lot of people who just want to tune in and watch wrecks, though. And maybe that's what NASCAR is now. Just avoid the wreck and that's it. And that's what you're gonna stick with. Fortunately, it's not the only type of racing here in the U.S. We have other things where you're not just going to be sitting around waiting for a wreck. You are going to be able to watch people do some racing, and that's what I like to watch, the dirt late models, and that's what I watch pretty much all the time now, and I can watch pretty much all year round, except for right now, right? Because they have a month break from the end of February here to March. But let me know what you guys make of what Denny Hamlin, what Mark Martin had to say here about the Daytona 500 and how it has become a effing crapshoot now. Let me know in the comments below.